Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget, standard or modern decks. This week we're taking a look at the Green Devotion in Modern, which is essentially a ramp strategy using the Devotion mechanic to power out huge threats ahead of schedule. And if you take a look at the deck list, the only card mentioning the Devotion mechanic is one of our lands. Nykthos Shrine to Nyx is a legendary land that can add colorless mana to our mana pool, or we can pay to tap Nykthos and choose a color, which in our case is just going to be green, and then we can add mana to our mana pool equal to our Devotion to Green, and our Devotion to Green is calculated by adding up all the colored mana symbols of our permanents in play, so that includes creatures, enchantments and planeswalkers. Add up all those green mana symbols, and the total sum of those mana symbols is going to be our Devotion to Green. So as soon as our Devotion to Green is more than 3, Nykthos starts generating additional mana, which is where this deck wants to be. This is also the reason why you see so many 1-drops that add Green Devotion, as well as some weird permanents like Wistful Selkie that adds 3 Green Devotion, as well as drawing us a card. So let's take a look at the entire deck, starting out with one of our 1-drops. Utopia Sprawl is a nice mana acceleration card that enchants a forest. As soon as the Utopia Sprawl enters the battlefield, we choose a color, which in our case is just going to be green, and then when the enchanted forest is tapped for mana, rather than just adding green to our mana pool, we can add double green to our mana pool, so this just ramps us for 1. Next up we have a few mana elves. We've got the classic Elvish Mystic, just adding green mana to our mana pool when we tap it, but we also have 4 copies of Arbor Elf, which is quite a bit better than Elvish Mystic in this deck, since it can untap a target forest, so just untapping a forest is kind of the same as adding green mana to our mana pool, but it can also untap a forest that's enchanted with a Utopia Sprawl, so this means that it can ramp us for 2 rather than just 1. Next up we have Oath of Nissa, which is a nice one as it's an enchantment that gives us some card selection and also increases our Devotion to Green. So as it enters the battlefield we get to take a look at the top 3, then choose a creature, land or planeswalker to put into our hand, and the rest goes to the bottom. So this just helps us find our Nykthos Shrine to Nyx or perhaps our powerful planeswalkers. Next up we have Elvish Visionary, which is just a 2 mana 1/1 that draws a card, so this is just a nice creature that increases our devotion and helps us cycle through the deck. We also have a 1-of Scavenging Ooze to fight graveyard decks. We can also find it with our Primal Command. We also have 2 copies of Voyaging Satyr, which is an interesting mana creature, so it can untap target land, so it doesn't specify forest like Arbor Elf, which means that we can untap our Nykthos Shrine to Nyx with our Voyaging Satyr, which means that we can add a lot of additional mana if our Devotion to Green is somewhat significant. Then we also have 2 copies of Eternal Witness, which returns a card from our graveyard to our hand when it enters the battlefield, so this can combine with Primal Command, which we will get to in a second, as well as just returning cards that the opponent may have discarded or killed. Then of course 4 copies of Wistful Selkie, which adds a lot of green devotion while also drawing a card, similar to Elvish Visionary. Next up is another very important card in the deck, which is Garruk Wildspeaker, 4 mana planeswalker. So with the +1 we can untap 2 target lands, which includes cards like Nykthos or perhaps a forest enchanted with Utopia Sprawl. So more often than not, untapping 2 lands means adding more than 2 mana to our mana pool. Then the -1 can also make a 3/3 beast token, and the -4 gives our creatures overrun, giving them +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. We also have a 1-of Polukranos, World Eater, which is also a nice mana sink with monstrosity, being able to fight creatures. We also have a 1-of Thragtusk to gain some life. Next up we have 3 copies of Primal Command, which is a very powerful and versatile card, so we have to choose 2 of the 4 modes, including gaining 7 life, putting target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, shuffling a graveyard back into the library, or searching our library for a creature card and putting it into our hand. So there's a lot of neat tricks we can do with Primal Command, including time walking the opponent by putting a land back on top of their deck and then getting an Eternal Witness, getting back our Primal Command and then doing it all over again the following turn. Of course we can just search up one of our powerful creatures in the matchup, or against a burn strategy, getting 7 life can be very relevant. And then speaking of big creatures, we've got 1 copy of Hornet Queen, which is a nice 7 mana 2/2 with flying and death touch that comes along with 4 1/1 flying death touch insect creature tokens. And we also have Craterhoof Behemoth, which is our finisher of choice. For 8 mana we get a 5/5 with haste. When it enters the battlefield, all creatures we control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures we control, so this will usually end the game on the spot as long as we have a few creatures in play. And then we also have a fun of Genesis Wave, which for X and triple green looks at the top X cards of our library and then put all permanents with converted mana cost X or less from among them into play. So this is a nice way to generate a lot of advantage if we have a lot of mana. Then let's take a quick look at the sideboard, where we have 2 copies of Dismember when we need some removal spells. We've got a Beast Within, which can deal with various permanents including lands. We've got a 3 Creeping Corrosion, which is mainly for the Affinity and Lantern control matchups, destroying all artifacts. A copy of Harmonize for the more grindy and control matchups where we have the time to draw 3 cards. 2 copies of Thragtusk for the burn matchups, but can also come in the more grindy removal based matchups. We've got an Acidic Slime, which can deal with various permanents. An Oversoul of Dusk, which has protection from blue, black and red, which can come in the Grixis Death Shadow matchups. This should probably be a Chameleon Colossus, but that card is pretty expensive on Magic Online at the moment for some weird reason. Then 3 copies of Relic of Progenitus for the graveyard decks, and then 1 copy of Witchbane Orb, which can come in matchups like Scapeshift and Burn, where it can protect us from direct damage. So that's the deck, and now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand looks okay. We don't have a big payoff yet, but it's definitely a great hand here as we get to go Arbor Elf into Utopia Sprawl, which is where this deck wants to be. So let's lead with Arbor Elf, and then next turn we get to enchant one of our forests with Utopia Sprawl and then untap that land right away with our Arbor Elf to generate additional mana. Steam Vents untapped from the opponent. Is our Arbor Elf gonna die here? Nope, a sleight of hand, so we might be up against Blue-Red Storm, which might be a tricky matchup as they usually kill us faster than we can kill them. So let's start by enchanting our forest with Utopia Sprawl. Choose green. So now we get to add double green. Play an Elvish Visionary to draw a card. Finds us a forest, so now we can use the Arbor Elf to untap our Utopia Sprawled forest to play out the Elvish Mystic, or we can attack for 1. I guess we'll just untap and then play out our Elvish Mystic here. So unfortunately we don't have any action spells yet, but we do have a lot of mana. So play Elvish Mystic and pass a turn unfortunately, and hope to find some big payoff cards. Alright, opponent gets a Watery Grave, so they might not be a Storm deck after all. And they're gonna Thoughtseize us and see 3 lands, so the opponent's gonna be a little disappointed there. And no follow-up from the opponent. And there's a Primal Command, perfect. So let's see here, we can play out our Nykthos. We can use Nykthos for Devotion. And we'll bounce one of the opponent's lands as well as searching a creature. And I think we'll bounce the Steam Vents here. Opponent adds blue. Could be a Thought Scour. That happens, and now what creature do we get is a question. We've got a lot of options. We could get an Eternal Witness to get back our Primal Command. We could just get one of our win conditions like Hornet Queen or Craterhoof. I think we just want to go get Eternal Witness. That way we can postpone our decision as to what creature to get next turn. So for now we'll just untap our forest, and then we get to replay the Eternal Witness, getting back Primal Command, and then we get to attack for 1 with our Elvish Visionary. Opponent did indeed have a Thought Scour, so we might be up against Grixis Death Shadow perhaps. Do they have another hand disruption spell? It's gotta be a Thoughtseize, since Inquisition can't get our Primal Command. There's also merit to shuffling the opponent's graveyard back into their deck so they can't play any Delve threats. And there's a Death Shadow into a Tasigur, so the opponent now with 2 big threats, but we still have our Primal Command in hand, which should be able to do some work here. So we can play out the Arbor Elf, which is mana neutral with our Nykthos in play. Then we can start by using our Nykthos for green Then we can play out the Nykthos. So we will keep the new Nykthos, and then we can use a new Nykthos to add even more mana. Then we can use our Primal Command to bounce the Blood Crypt and search up one of our win conditions. Which is going to be our Craterhoof Behemoth. And then we can just use our Arbor Elf on Utopia Sprawl and play Craterhoof, and the opponent sees the writing on the wall as they're dead. Alright, sweet. On to sideboarding. So this is the matchup where we want the Oversoul of Dusk. We also want the Dismembers as they can answer the opponent's threats. Relic is interesting as it does slow down the opponent's delve threats somewhat and is also okay against Snapcaster, but it is a bit slow and it doesn't really further our own game plan, which is something you have to be careful with. Thragtusk could be okay, Harmonize could be okay, although the matchup might be too fast for Harmonize. So what do we take out? I think Voyaging Satyr is probably a little too fragile and a bit too expensive. Doesn't have an immediate impact. Then I could also see taking out Polukranos as the opponent's creatures are quite large. And then the question is, do we want to add any Thragtusks, Relics or Harmonizes over anything we have in our current deck? Maybe Genesis Wave is a little risky against Stubborn Denial, and we would rather just have an additional threat like Thragtusk or Relic. Acidic Slime could also be okay as it's a Death Touch creature that trades for the opponent's creatures, but it also just gets blocked by a Snapcaster. I think we'll just add another Thragtusk and try it like this. Scavenging Ooze still has some utility against Snapcaster Mage. So yeah, let's run it like this and see what happens. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand, which doesn't really have any ramp in it. We've got a 7-drop and 2 5-drops, along with Oath of Nissa Scavenging Ooze. If our opponent keeps a very reactive hand, this could be okay. But if they have a turn 2 Death Shadow, or perhaps a turn 2 Tasigur, we could be in trouble. I think we need some more ramp, but again, against a hand disruption deck, we can't really rely on our 1-drop elves surviving. So I think we'll try to keep this and then hope our opponent has a lot of hand disruption rather than a fast clock. Opponent fetches for a Watery Grave, so we might see an Inquisition or a Thoughtseize here. Cycles a Street Wraith and there's an Inquisition which can take Scavenging Ooze or Oath of Nissa. Takes the Scavenging Ooze. So the opponent might have a Snapcaster or a Tasigur of some sort in hand. Alright, Arbor Elf is not bad, which means we can just play out the Arbor Elf rather than the Oath of Nissa here. So if we draw a Utopia Sprawl, we could be off to the races. Opponent fetching for a Steam Vents. For a Serum Visions. So they could be casting a Tasigur here, or a 1/1 Death Shadow. And it's gonna be a 1/1 Death Shadow, alright. And a land to draw, so let's start with Oath of Nissa here. Another Mana Elf or a Nykthos would be okay. And alright, there's Arbor Elf. We can't take Utopia Sprawl unfortunately, but we'll take another Mana Elf and put them back in any order, and then play out our Arbor Elf. And we could attack with our Arbor Elf, but that would just grow the Death Shadow, so I don't think we want to be attacking here, so we'll just pass the turn. If our elves survive, we could already cast a Thragtusk or a Primal Command next turn. What we don't want to see is an Izzet Static Caster, as that could kill both our Arbor Elves here, which would be quite unfortunate. Opponent just attacking with the 4/4 Death Shadow, which we have to take here. Can't afford to block. Serum Visions from the opponents. And a Collective Brutality on Arbor Elf, as well as taking our Primal Command because the opponent escalated by discarding a Swamp. So we got set back quite significantly here, as we don't get to cast one of our 5-drops. Still don't want to attack with the Arbor Elf really, so we'll just play a Forest and say go here. Opponent takes 2 from Blood Crypt, Death Shadow up to a 6/6. Another Serum Visions, opponent down to 2 cards in hand. Death Shadow gets in for 6. No blocks on our part. Also have to keep Temur Battle Rage in mind. But that wouldn't be lethal this turn yet. We do get to untap and we draw a Nykthos, so that's nice. So I think we'll just play out a Thragtusk here. Gain some life back, make a 5-3. That can potentially block Death Shadow at some point. And then still make a 3-3 afterwards. Liliana, the Last Hope, that can kill our Arbor Elf with the +1. So that's not great for us. And Death Shadow is still going to keep attacking here. And I think we take it. And then we can kill Liliana on the way back, or potentially start attacking our opponent if we draw some chump blockers. So Utopia Sprawl the draw, which means we're getting close to casting our Hornet Queen. So now we can't really afford to attack our opponents with Thragtusk, otherwise the Death Shadow is lethal. So the question is, do we want to attack Liliana and risk dying to our opponent having a fetch land to give the Death Shadow an additional +3/+3? Or do we just play Utopia Sprawl and hope to hardcast Hornet Queen at some point? Let's start by casting Utopia Sprawl on one of our forests, since the opponent might have a Stubborn Denial to counter the Utopia Sprawl here. They do not. We'll choose green. Guess we can also choose black for Dismember after sideboard. I did not think of that. So I think we do just attack Liliana here and hope the opponent doesn't kill us on the way back, since Liliana is going to be a problem if we don't deal with her. So Liliana down, and we'll play out the forest, which means that if we draw land next turn we can play Hornet Queen. Fetch land would do it, if they have another shock land that is, which they might not, since I think most Grixis Shadow decks only run the 4 shock lands. So if they're forced to fetch a basic, they can only deal themselves 1 damage. So they're attacking us for 6. A Lightning Bolt would also kill us, but most Grixis Dead Shadow decks don't run Bolt anymore. It's gonna be a Snapcaster for perhaps Serum Visions. So the opponent is tapped out. And if we can find a land for Hornet Queen, I think we're pretty stable. And there's a land, awesome. Play the Hornet Queen. And we're definitely attacking with Thragtusk. Probably should have attacked before playing the Hornet Queen to give the opponent less information. But now we can pass priority. Opponent's at 2. Temur Battle Rage kills us. But I think that's about it. Of course, Lightning Bolt if the opponent still runs that. Bloodstain Mire from the opponent. They fetch to 1, getting a basic. No, another tap Blood Crypt, so the opponent did have the other shock land, so if they did have the fetch last turn we would have died. Death Shadow up to a 12/12. Temur Battle Rage or bust, I think. And Battle Rage only being a sideboard card. Oh, Engineered Explosives. Did not think of that. Can take out all our insect tokens, as the opponent played it for 0. But we still have the Hornet Queen that can block the Death Shadow itself. So insect tokens go away, Death Shadow and Snapcaster attack. And we're definitely blocking the Death Shadow here, taking 2 from Snapcaster. And then, is our Thragtusk lethal or not is a question. As we find another Nykthos, I think we go for it. I guess they could have another Snapcaster to chump and then kill us with the other Snapcaster on the way back. Yep, and they do. But we couldn't have stopped that anyways. And we won't play out the Nykthos to hide some information here. But yeah, I guess Snapcaster in Ambush Viper form gets the job done. Did not think we were gonna lose that one, but Engineered Explosives did get the job done there. Alright, so on to game 3. Do we change anything? I still don't think we want a relics. Yeah, I think this configuration is still fine. So I think we'll just run it back like this. Maybe Craterhoof is not necessary since the opponent's already at such a low life total. But it could still kill the opponent out of nowhere. Maybe we would rather just have another Thragtusk, that's just another mid-sized threat, rather than the Craterhoof that we might not get to in time. I guess that makes sense, since the opponent's already pretty low. But I think Hornet Queen is definitely great, since all the Death Touch creatures trade with the opponent's creatures. So sure, let's try it like this. Unfortunately a hand with no lands, so we have to mulligan. Alright, we'll keep this. We have the 1-2 punch of Arbor Elf plus Utopia Sprawl. And we will scry that to the bottom. So let's lead with Arbor Elf. So if the opponent doesn't answer Arbor Elf or doesn't disrupt our hand, we could already cast a Garruk next turn. Instead a Watery Grave untapped. This is going to be Serum Visions or an Inquisition. It's going to be an Inquisition taking our Utopia Sprawl, unfortunately. And we draw forests, so do we even want to attack with Arbor Elf? For 1 is a question. I don't think we do. So let's just play forest and say go. Opponent fetches, sleight of hand, and no play. So the opponent might have Stubborn Denial at the ready to counter our Garruk, which would be unfortunate, or they might just have a Thought Scour up, which is also possible. Our hand isn't really doing much, so there is the argument of just playing around the Stubborn Denial, and it's not like our deck has a ton of non-creature spells that the opponent would still have a lot of Stubborn Denials after sideboard, so I think we just have to run out the Garruk here and try to push our advantage. So yeah, let's play Nykthos, play out our Garruk, and it does resolve. Alright, so I think we just make a beast token rather than untapping lands that don't do anything. And pass a turn. Opponent gets a basic swamp. And there's a Liliana of the Veil. Alright, that can kill one of our creatures, but the beast is gonna finish the job here. So let's sacrifice Arbor Elf. And draw an Elvish Mystic. So let's just finish off Liliana here. And then we can play out the Mystic, make another beast, and say go. Another fetch land from the opponent, so if they do have Death Shadows, they can play them. Gets another island, Serum Visions. And another Liliana of the Veil, not being too effective on this board. There's an argument for sacking a beast to play around and engineered explosives, but I think we just want to keep the 2 beasts. Let's go ahead and play out our Selkie. So we get to play out our forests, untap 2 forests, and then add mana equal to our devotion, play out another Selkie, draw a card, Eternal Witness, not bad. I think adding the Witness to the board seems okay. So let's play it and get back, I think, Utopia Sprawl, which combines nicely with Garruk. And then we will kill Liliana, and then the question is, do we attack our opponent for 3 or no? I think if our opponent had a Delve threat, they would have played it, so it's very likely that they have Death Shadows, but then they also fetch their basics, so maybe they don't. I think I'm okay with attacking our opponent here. That way, if they don't have a threat, they might just be dead next turn. So let's see what the opponent has. Serum Visions. And alright, our opponent scoops it up, so they did not have any threats to block our creatures, no removal, no Death Shadows, no Delve creatures, and our attack was just gonna kill him. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand looks okay. We've got some ramp, and hopefully Visionary finds us something spicy. Up against Mountain Goblin Guide. Alright, up against Burn. Hopefully the guide reveals us a land. And reveals a Selkie instead. Alright, still not too bad. So we'll take 2 here. And I think we want to lead with Utopia Sprawl rather than the Mystic, as the Mystic could get Searing Blazed, which would be unfortunate. So it's just Utopia Sprawl and name green and pass a turn. So next turn we could play the Selkie, or we could go Visionary plus Mystic. Alright, looks like black-red burn with Keldar Marauders, dealing us a damage when it enters the battlefield, and has vanishing 2, so it's only gonna stick around for 1 attack. Could go Visionary plus Elvish Mystic rather than the Selkie, since if we're gonna chump the Marauders, I would rather chump with Visionary rather than the Selkie. And then we can also make an Arbor Elf, which with the Utopia Sprawl can give us access to quite a bit of mana. So sure, let's lead with the Visionary. Draw a card. And then play the Mystic, or rather the Arbor Elf. And say go. And then the plan is to chump the Marauders with the Visionary. Alright, we do get a land this time. And we'll chump the Marauders. Take 2 down to 13 already. Riftbolt enters the Suspend Zone and another Keldar Marauders. Alright. Let's see here. Another Utopia Sprawl is nice, since we can just put that on the same forest and then produce a lot of extra mana. So I think that's the plan here. So enchant this. Say green. Then add 3 green mana to play the Selkie. And draw a card. Eternal Witness, not bad. So now we get to untap our forest. Play Nykthos, tap our forest, play the Mystic. Then use Nykthos for Devotion to green. And then play Eternal Witness. And return the Elvish Visionary. Play the Elvish Visionary. Draw a card. And Primal Command, alright. That can definitely gain us some life next turn. So if we don't die here, we should be in okay shape, as the Marauders vanish and deal us an additional point of damage. Let's see what the Riftbolt takes out and just goes face. So lots of triggers here. Let's see if we're dead at the end of the day. Everyone gets in there. Opponent has 3 cards in hand. The question is if we wanna just chump the Marauders or actually trade with them. I think chumping is fine, so we can put the Visionary in front of the Marauders again and then trade Eternal Witness for Goblin Guide. Seems okay. So we're still at 8. Vexen Devils is not gonna deal us 4 damage, it's just gonna stay in play. So another Vexing Devils, I think we can also leave in play. Alright, and another Nykthos to draw. So lots of mana coming up. So let's start by tapping Forest for mana. And then we can use our Nykthos. And then we can play Primal Command to gain 7 life and search for a creature. We'll gain 7. And alright, our opponent scoops it up. So, not sure what creature we would have gotten there. Maybe a Hornet Queen, maybe a Craterhoof. But we had a lot of mana, plus we could play Nykthos to get even more mana. So things were looking good there. So let's go on to sideboarding against Black-Red Burn. So definitely a matchup where Witchbane Orb should come in. And let's see, do we have anything else? Double Thragtusk also definitely needs to come in. I could make an argument for the Oversoul, but I think it's too slow. What do we take out? I don't think this is a matchup where we particularly want the Hornet Queen or the Genesis Wave. Let's see, what else do we cut? One more. Maybe it's just the Voyaging Satyr. This looks okay. So let's try it like this. And this hand looks okay. We've got Arbor Elf into Utopia Sprawl. Opponent with Goblin Guides. Please hit a land. Does not hit a land, instead another Selkie. So if this Arbor Elf dies, that would be unfortunate. But I think we still have to go for it, otherwise we just don't have any mana to work with. So hopefully no Searing Blazes in our future. Yep, and that's the Searing Blaze. Oh well, can't win them all. So here now we're stuck with 1 mana. I think we just Utopia Sprawl here rather than the Mystic. Let's see if Goblin Guide is kind to us for once. Nope. A Witchbane Orb, which we're probably not gonna cast before we die, since we're just stuck playing 1 Elvish Mystic here, which is gonna die to a Searing Blood, which also deals 3 damage to us. So things are looking quite rough, to say the least. In fact, we might just be dead here. Riftbolt and Utopia Sprawl is not gonna do it here. Say green, pass it back. A lightning bolt, and then the rift bolt is gonna finish us off. Alright, so that Searing Blaze was quite punishing, but the opponent also had a Searing Blood apparently, so we can't really rely on our mana elves in this matchup. So maybe should have started with the Utopia Sprawl, but with not drawing any lands in the first 3 turns, we were probably gonna die anyways. So do we want to change anything? I don't think so. So let's just run it back. But now we get to be on the play, and hopefully this time we get there. Alright, this looks better. We get to lead with the Utopia Sprawl. We have Visionary to chump, Eternal Witness to get back the Visionary, Garruk to ramp us, and then Primal Command to gain us some life. Another Goblin Guide start from the opponent. Reveals Arbor Elf. So we get to go Visionary. Well, I meant to play the Visionary using our Nykthos mana, so could have also played the Arbor Elf, but apparently I tapped my mana wrong. Searing Blood taking out the Elvish Visionary. Would have taken out the Arbor Elf had we played it, but then we still would have had a Visionary in play. And Goblin Guide still not being kind to us, as we find a Thragtusk. So now we can play Eternal Witness, get back Elvish Visionary. If we play Arbor Elf, then we can potentially play one of our 5-drops next turn. But I think I still want to play the Witness here, just to be able to trade with the Goblin Guide. Yeah, I think we do play the Witness. Return the Visionary. And say go. 3 mana for a hardcast Riftbolt. Goblin Guide gets in and finally reveals a land. Alright, so we might be off to the races. And another Garruk revealed. So here we can play out Garruk, untap 2 lands, and Nykthos is still mana neutral, but then we can also play an Elvish Visionary or an Arbor Elf. So that's good. So let's play the Visionary. Draw a card. Play Arbor Elf. And say go. And between Thragtusk, Primal Command, we do have the life gain. So we just have to survive this turn here. Another Goblin Guide. Let's see where they go. Both at us. Reveal 2 lands, so that's nice. So definitely blocking one. The question is if we block the other one or not. I don't think we do. So down to 9, but the opponent does have 2 mana up, which could be a Skullcrack to prevent our life gain. So we can Utopia Sprawl the forest here. So I think that's step 1. Tap this for mana. Then we can use Nykthos for green. Then we can play out a Thragtusk, I think, over Primal Command, as it also just adds a creature to the board. And hope the opponent doesn't have a Skullcrack. They do. Alright, that's unfortunate. So we're down to 6, but the opponent has 1 card in hand. So he still can make a land drop here if we want to. Untap or Enchanted Forests to add 3 more mana. So let's make a beast. We could put a land back on top, but then we don't get to gain a life, which I think we want to do. Or we can just... I guess we could put a land back and search up another Thragtusk. That might actually be the play. That way, if they have 1 burn spell, they can't kill us and they will draw a land back for sure. So actually, yeah, I think that's the play. So we will put a land back on top and then search for a creature. And I guess we'll put back the Blackleaf Cliffs, not that it really matters. And then search up another Thragtusk. Could maybe go for the Craterhoof for the win, that's also an option. Since we'll have more than enough mana next turn. Although Thragtusk also seems appealing. I guess we can just go for the Craterhoof and kill our opponent next turn, rather than play all these life gain cards. We could have also Primal Commanded, bouncing a land, getting a Witness, and then keep bouncing the opponent's lands. But yeah, I'm not sure. We had a lot of options last turn. A Lava Spike, probably killing the Garruk. No, going to our face, but we know our opponent's last card is a Blackleaf Cliff. Now we get to untap and the world is our oyster. Play a forest, play a Selkie, which is mana neutral with the Nykthos in play, draw a card, add some mana, make another beast, I guess, to increase our creature count, play Craterhoof, and just smash. And yeah, this should be enough. And Green Devotion is triumphant over Black-Red Burn. On to the next one. And this looks like a keep. Opponent already down to 6, but they're happy with their 6. So let's play the Utopia Sprawl. Name green and say go. And let's see what the opponent is up to. Caves of Koilos, so this could be Black-White Hate Bears, as we see Ether Vial right away. So this could be an okay matchup. We do have to protect our Nykthos from Ghost Quarters, so don't want to play out the Nykthos unless we need to use it. So let's lead with an Oath of Nissa here. And just find a forest, unfortunately, as we find both Oath and Primal Command. but the forest is not too bad since we kind of needed another land. Play Visionary, draw a card, and say go. So lots of Elvish Visionaries. Opponent just has Shambling Vent go, so nothing to get back with the Witness yet, so we're probably just gonna play double Visionary, and yeah, let's just attack for one first. Play Visionary. Primal Command is not bad. Play another Visionary, our devotion starts growing here, already up to 5. So Nykthos could generate quite a bit of mana next turn. In fact, we could already play Hornet Queen. Opponent's gonna violin a Relic Warder. And that's gonna get rid of our Utopia Sprawl. So that means no Hornet Queen for us. Forest to draw, so let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4 devotion, so we have a total of 5 mana. So we can Primal Command, bouncing the Ether Vial or the land, and then searching up a creature. That's not too bad. So I think we go for it. So we'll bounce this, and then I'm not too sure what we should get as far as creatures are concerned. Maybe we just get a Wistful Selkie as it's good with our Nykthos. I don't think we need Craterhoof since we already have the Hornet Queen. Yeah, the Selkie kind of seems okay. If our Nykthos can survive a couple turns, it can definitely add a lot of mana. So let's get the Selkie. And say go, no attacks for us this turn. Opponent is stuck replaying their Ether Vial, so they don't have a lot of interaction going. So let's see here, now we have a total of 6 mana, so we can Eternal Witness, get back Primal Command. So let's use Nykthos to play the Selkie. Draw a card, another Oath. So we could play the Oath, or we can just play Witness, get back Primal Command, which also seems pretty sweet. And also more mana efficient. And also adds more devotion. Let's get that back. And we're in good shape here if our Nykthos survives, and even if it doesn't, we're still doing okay. Opponent definitely having some mana issues. Stuck on 2 lands, and then the bounced Ether Vial means they still can't play their 3-drops. Thraben Inspector is totally acceptable, making a clue token. And now we're just gonna go off here. So our Nykthos adds a pretty insane amount of mana. 10, 11, 12, so Genesis Wave for 9 should be enough. I guess we can, we can't play the Oath since it replaces the other one, so let's just Genesis Wave here. The correct play might involve Primal Command plus maybe a Witness. We could bounce a land, get back a Witness, and then do it over again, but Genesis Waving for 9 is a lot sweeter, so let's do that. Done. And hopefully our opponent doesn't concede here, alright. So what permanents do we want to put in play? Definitely all of them. Make sure I clicked all of them. Alright. And let's say green. Put that on forest. I guess we can only put it on a tapped forest here. Draw a card from the Selkie. And we're definitely doing it here. So let's see, we've got 3 mana at our disposal. We can Polukranos for 1, that's not too relevant. So I guess we'll just Oath again. And basically looking for Craterhoof. There we go. Any order. And I think our opponent knows they're dead, but they're probably just gonna go through the motions. If they have an Eldrazi Temple, I guess they could snipe the Craterhoof with the Thought-Knot Seer. But that's about it. Path on Polukranos is acceptable. We'll get a Forest. Vial up to 2. Opponent sacks a clue. So Thought-Knot Seer no longer an option. I guess they could still have a Thoughtseize if they run that. For the Craterhoof, but even then. Alright, let's add an obscene amount of mana here. That's probably enough. Play Hornet Queen. Make some tokens. Primal Command. Now we're just playing with our food. Opponent adds white mana. I guess we'll get Eternal Witness. We could witness back the Primal Command and bounce the Ether Vial as well. Technically the correct play, I guess. Alright, let's get this over with. Opponent's gonna vial in something. It's gonna be a Thalia. I don't think that's gonna save them. And let's get a Selkie. Don't want to show the opponent a Thragtusk that they don't know about. Play the Craterhoof. Could have played some more creatures first, but taken up enough time from the opponent already. Alright, I think this is enough. Alright, and our opponent concedes. Sweet. So turn 7 with quite the overkill onto sideboarding. We're up against Black-White's Death and Taxes. Did not see any Eldrazi, but we can safely assume they're in there. Dismember could be an option. I don't think we want Creeping Corrosion. Thragtusk could be okay. Acidic Slime could be okay. Oversoul still dies to Path to Exile, so that's not too great. I think our main deck configuration is quite good. Don't think we need Scavenging Ooze in particular. Opponent doesn't really use a graveyard. Kind of like Acidic Slime as it kills lands and Ether Vials. Don't think we need the Thragtusk. Everything else still looks okay. Hornet Queen looks okay against Eldrazi. We've got a Craterhoof. Yeah, I think we just run it back with minor changes. Well, we can't keep a no-lander, so we'll have to go to 6. And this one we'll keep. And Witness is interesting. We don't have double green yet, but Eternal Witness is a powerful card. I think we have to bottom her though. Really need double green here. Opponent leads with a tapped Galder Shrine, so no Ether Vial for them. Let's lead with Oath. Looking for some action, Garruk would do. One of our larger creatures. Selkie is also not bad, as is Voyaging Satyr. Don't have triple green yet for the Selkie, but we can always tap Nykthos if we're at 3 Devotion, which we're not guaranteed to be on turn 3. Taking the Satyr lets us untap the Nykthos, which is nice, but don't have a lot of Devotion yet. I think we take the Selkie, since next turn we're gonna play the Visionary, and then hopefully we find another untapped green source for our Selkie on 3. There's the Eldrazi Temple, so we might see an Eldrazi now. Eldrazi Displacer, that's fine. And there's our untapped green source, which is good, so now we get to play Visionary. Next turn Selkie, and then we have a lot of devotion for these shrines. A way we can lose is definitely the opponent having a quick start with multiple Eldrazi's, including Thought-Knot Seer disrupting us. We'll just take it. And do they have the Thought-Knot Seer? They do. So that might take the Selkie or the Polukranos. And they do take the Selkie. So we don't have a play for this turn, unfortunately. But next turn we have a Polukranos, and the fact that it took them so long probably means they don't have a removal spell for Polukranos. We might have to reconsider those Dismembers, as they are pretty good against Thragtusk. I still don't think we want to chump, as every devotion is important here. There's an Ether Vial a few turns late, and there's a Selkie a turn late as well. I think we just run out Polukranos and say go. Could attack with the Visionary, but if they somehow deal with Polukranos, we might consider chumping. And the 1 damage is probably not going to make a huge difference. They're going to displace the Polukranos with the Displacer, which makes sense. I think we still take it, as the additional devotion might make a difference here. Especially with 2 Nykthos in hand. Opponent passes. So let's see here. Opponent in the draw step is going to displace their Thragtusk. Alright. Can't do anything about that except for using Polukranos, but we don't have enough mana to kill anything yet. So they're gonna take a look at our hand, probably take the Selkie here. Alright, so in our main phase, we can play Arbor Elf for free essentially, thanks to Nykthos. Then use Nykthos for 5, play another Nykthos. We'll have 8 total, so we can actually use Polukranos on the Eldrazi Displacer. I think that's the plan. So now we have 8 mana, so X equals 3, so that's enough to kill the Displacer. And hopefully they don't have a path to exile. We could attack with Polukranos here, which hits quite hard for 8. Or we can keep it to block the Thragtusk. But we have 2 chum blockers, so I think I feel safe attacking with Polukranos and putting a clock on the opponent. Ooh, Zealous Persecution is just gonna kill our 2 elves, and that's gonna make it so that the Thragtusk just kills us on the spot. So that's unfortunate. So after sideboard, maybe we have to reconsider these Dismembers. Seeing Zealous Persecution makes me kind of want to skip maybe some of our 1-drops, but they are typically very good in a matchup. So let's see, if we bring in Dismembers, what do we take out? Perhaps just cutting 2 Mystics is okay. Still want to keep our best 1-drop. Still have Utopia Sprawl. Satyr survives the Persecution. Also don't want to overboard against the sideboard card. But I could see the Mystics being a liability against the Persecution. And we should still have enough ramp, so I think we'll try it like this. Definitely want to be on the play, and this looks like a keep. Bit of a slow hand, but can definitely get there. I'm probably gonna lead with the Satyr to ramp into Garruk. Opponent already down to 6, but they're happy with their 6. Courtyard, do they have the Vial? They do not. And there's Oath of Nissa turn late. We'll just play the Satyr and say go. They might have a Fatal Push. They do not. Turn 2, could they have a Thalia? That would, yep, that would delay our Garruk for a turn. So now we're stuck just playing 2 Visionaries. Finds Arbor Elf. So we could play Arbor Elf, but then we're kind of overextending into Persecution again. Or we can just play an Oath of Nissa for 2 mana. Or we can just play a Visionary. I guess we'll use Oath of Nissa as it's slightly more mana efficient in the face of Thalia. And Nykthos is kind of what we're looking for, although I could see getting the second Garruk as well, but probably gotta go for the Nykthos here. And now we just need to find any of our big payoff cards, and then we're in business. Ghost Quarter, that can kill our Nykthos, so don't want to play it out unless we need it. We'll take 2 from the Thalia. And the opponent's kind of incentivized to keep up their Ghost Quarter, since with the Voyaging Satyr we could get pretty crazy with this Nykthos. Do we see an upkeep path to exile? On the Satyr, we do. Can't really do anything at instant speed here, so we'll just let that happen. And find a tapped forest, but a pretty good exchange for us, all things considered. And the draw step, unfortunately, just a forest. So we actually don't have enough mana to play Garruk here because of the path, so we're stuck just playing Visionary and Arbor Elf. So let's play Visionary, draw a card. There's a Craterhoof, alright, there's our payoff. So let's hit for 1. And I guess hope our opponent doesn't have a Zealous Persecution, since that would be bad news. There it is. That's unfortunate. But now we do get to make a Garruk. And Primal Command also not bad, as it can bounce one of the opponent's lands, get a Witness, and do it all over again. Is that better than just playing Garruk and making a beast? I don't think so. So let's just play Garruk and make a beast. Say go. Opponent's got a Wasteland Strangler, which is gonna strangle our beast thanks to the path to exile earlier. And then Thalia's gonna finish off the Garruk, so that's quite unfortunate. So the opponent's synergy's coming to fruition here. But Polukranos, not a bad draw. We can still run back the Primal Command play, bouncing one of the opponent's lands. They're clearly stuck on 3. Or we can just run out Polukranos, and then we still have 3 mana up to kill the Thalia. That also seems pretty appealing, but then we would have to run out the Nykthos and expose it to the Ghost Quarter. But I don't think that's the end of the world, given that the opponent's stuck on 3, they probably just don't want to use the Ghost Quarter on the Nykthos if they don't have to. A reason to use Polukranos right now is if our opponent has another path to exile, since then they could kill the Polukranos, and that way we don't get to kill the Thalia. I think we just use it right now. Say go. So now we have a 6/6 in play. And 2 pretty good cards in hand. There's a Relic of Progenitus, which is okay, but not great. Alright, the opponent is attacking. So they might have another Wasteland Strangler that they want to use. No, instead they just have another path. So we'll just get a forest. Alright, and we draw forest, so a lot of mana at the ready. So I think we just want to Primal Command here. But Primal Command for a 4-drop. Don't have any great 4-drop creatures to get. And getting Witness in the face of Relic is also not great. So maybe we just get something like a big finisher like Hornet Queen. Let's return the Courtyard. And search for a creature. Alright, let's see. I think we just get the Hornet Queen here. Could get Acidic Slime to kill a land. But if we have 2 great finishers, then we should be in okay shape. Hornet Queen may be a bit risky against Zealous Persecution, but they already played one. I think it's between Slime, Hornet Queen and Thragtusk here. I think we'll just go for the Hornet Queen, and then if the opponent does not have These Elves Persecution, we get to go Hornet Queen into Craterhoof, which is quite powerful. Opponent's gonna sack the Relic just to draw a card here. But they are gonna be stuck on 3 lands. So we go down to 9. Opponent passes it back. So let's play Hornet Queen. We even have enough mana to use Nykthos, but not enough devotion to also play Craterhoof. Yeah, let's just say go and hope opponent doesn't have Persecution. They don't. Eldrazi Temple could get a Thought-Knot Seer to steal our Craterhoof. And there it is. Maybe should have played out the land to disincentivize the opponent from doing that. But we still have our insect tokens, and Selkie is not a bad one. Just a land, the draw. Alright, I think we want to start attacking with some of our flyers here. For 4. There's a Tidehollow Scholar, which is not going to see anything of relevance. No attacks from the opponents. And Acidic Slime is a nice draw. Can blow up the opponent's White Source or the Temple. Temple opens up Reality Smasher draws, but the deck probably doesn't play a whole lot of Reality Smashers. So yeah, I think we just Acidic Slime the White Source and then keep attacking with our flyers. Opponent's gonna Ghost Quarter the Nykthos, that's fine. They're down on even more lands. So let's hit for 5, I think, so we can make this a 3-turn clock. And then Acidic Slime. The Courtyard. Ghost Quarter the draw. Elvish Visionary is not bad. Let's play that first, I guess. Opponent could Ghost Quarter themselves to get white, but doesn't really matter here. Let's hit for, I guess, 6. Play Garruk. Make a beast. We could plus to then overrun next turn, but I would rather just have the additional beast token. And a concession from the opponent. Awesome. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.